This happened a few years ago, specifically in my second year after graduating from college. At that time, I had just moved to a small city and found a leisurely office job. The pay wasn't great, but it was just enough to get by. The apartment I rented was in the suburbs, an old building from some years ago, on the top floor. The landlady was very nice, but the soundproofing of the apartment was really bad, especially on rainy days. The sound of raindrops hitting the windows was like a stampede. It was a Friday in October. The sky had been gloomy all day, and by evening the rain started. At first, it was a drizzle, but then it turned into a downpour. I got home from work, made a cup of coffee, and planned to watch a movie to relax. The rain grew louder and louder, covering everything. I was curled up on the sofa, watching a boring soap opera on TV, feeling drowsy. Around 9 p.m., I was woken up by a strange sound. It was very faint, like fingernails scratching on glass or someone fumbling for something. I paused, thinking it might be the wind blowing something. Our building was old and often made various strange noises. I tried to refocus on the TV, but the sound came again, this time clearer, and it sounded like it was coming from the kitchen. I started to feel a little uneasy. I remembered the kitchen window was closed. I put down my coffee cup and quietly walked to the kitchen door. The room was dark, with only the faint light from the living room filtering in. I stood at the doorway, holding my breath, listening carefully. The rain was still heavy, but this time, I heard a very slight click, like a lock being tampered with. My heart suddenly pounded. I didn't have any pets, and no one was visiting. In that instant, a chill went from the soles of my feet all the way to my head. I clenched my fists and bravely turned on the kitchen light. The moment the light came on, I saw the kitchen window. The latch, which I had clearly locked, was pushed open by half an inch. Outside the window was a pitch-black rainy night. I couldn't see anything. I quickly locked the window tightly, and then pulled the curtains shut. At that moment, I felt like a fool. Maybe it really was just the wind, but my palms were already drenched in cold sweat. I forced myself to go back to the living room and continue watching TV, but my thoughts couldn't focus. My ears were constantly trying to catch any subtle sound. Time ticked by, and the rain showed no signs of letting up. I tried hard to stay calm, but my body was stiff as if filled with lead. About half an hour later, I heard faint tapping sounds on the living room window glass. One tap, then two, slowly and rhythmically. My breathing stopped. There was no balcony or protrusion outside my living room window. It would be impossible for anyone to climb to my floor without tools. I didn't even dare to look out the window. The tapping continued for a few seconds, then stopped. It felt like an eternity. Just when I thought it was all over, I heard my bedroom doorknob being gently, slowly turned. My blood instantly froze. I had locked the bedroom door. I stared at that door, my heartbeat pounding painfully in my eardrums. The doorknob turned again, this time harder, and then I heard a very faint sigh, very low, almost completely covered by the sound of the rain. I could almost feel that the person outside the door was pressed against the door panel, listening for movement inside. A strong urge to survive surged through me. I grabbed the table lamp next to me, my muscles tense. I heard the doorknob being suddenly twisted again, followed by a muffled thud, as if someone had hit the door with their body. I instinctively let out a scream, forgetting everything, and dashed towards the entrance. I opened the door at top speed and rushed out. The hallway was pitch black, with only the emergency lights emitting a faint glow. I didn't bother to lock the door or put on my shoes. Barefoot on the cold concrete floor, I ran down the stairs desperately. My hurried breathing and the sound of the rain echoed in the stairwell. I didn't know if anyone was chasing me. I just knew I had to run as far as possible. When I reached the ground floor lobby, I felt like my lungs were about to burst. Outside the lobby's glass door, a shadowy figure stood vaguely in the rain. He was motionless, like a statue. I abruptly stopped, all the blood in my body turning cold. The figure slowly raised his hand and pointed in my direction. I didn't think twice, and just ran out of the apartment building's main door into the pouring rain. The rain hit my face, stinging. I ran desperately along the street, feeling like my body was no longer my own. I don't know how long I ran, until I saw the lights of a 24-hour convenience store, and I rushed in as if clutching a lifeline. I leaned against the counter, disheveled and trembling all over. The cashier, a young girl, looked at me in surprise and asked what was wrong. I just said I was being followed, and then I couldn't say anything else. When the police arrived, they inspected my apartment but found nothing. The windows and door locks were intact, with no signs of forced entry. But I knew that everything I heard, everything I saw, was not an illusion. Since then, I moved out of that city and have never been back. Every time a rainy night comes, I subconsciously pull the curtains shut and check all the doors and windows. I know the police found nothing, but I can never forget that rainy night, that blurry figure standing in the rain, and the moment he raised his hand and pointed at me. To this day, I still don't understand why he was there, or what he truly wanted to do. That rainy night, like a cold stone, forever presses down on my heart. This happened a few years ago, back in the autumn of 2019, to be exact. I just graduated college and was feeling a bit lost with work, so I decided to take a road trip to clear my head. No fixed destination, just drive until I felt like stopping, anything to get out of my tiny apartment. That night, I set out from a small, out-of-the-way town. It was pouring rain, thunder and lightning, and the visibility was terrifyingly low. I was driving my old Honda Civic, and the wipers were working overtime, but they couldn't keep up with the deluge. The radio was just static. I hadn't picked up a decent station for ages. I regretted not booking a hotel in advance, but at the time, I just wanted to be spontaneous. The rain intensified, and darkness had completely fallen. I put on my high beams, trying to get a clearer view of the road ahead, but the rain just scattered the light. It was then that I noticed a faint light in my rearview mirror. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, the rain was so thick. But the light stayed there, appearing and disappearing, like someone shining a flashlight. A chill ran down my spine because I'd been driving this road for almost an hour and hadn't seen another car. And the way the light moved was strange. It wasn't like headlights, more like a flashlight, flickering on and off, as if deliberately avoiding my gaze. I glanced at my fuel gauge. It was almost empty. I needed to find a gas station. I started to slow down, hoping the car behind me would pass so I could see what it was. But the light also slowed down, maintaining the same distance from me. My heart sank. I was sure now it wasn't a hallucination. Someone was following me. A cold dread washed over me. I sped up for a bit, and the light sped up too. I tried to pull into an abandoned rest stop by the road, hoping to shake them off. But when I turned off the engine and hid in my car, the light stopped too, about 50 meters away from me, looking eerily unsettling in the rain. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my palms sweating. Through the rain-blurred windows, I tried desperately to see what was behind me, but I couldn't see anything except that faint light. My heart pounded, my mind a blank. Only the thought of run remained. I started the car, slammed the accelerator, and sped into the darkness ahead. The light immediately followed, and this time it was closer, almost right on my tail. I saw it in my rearview mirror. The light started to sway from side to side, as if searching for something. Then I heard a dull thud, and my car jolted violently. I realized they had hit me. My heart leaped into my throat, adrenaline surging. I stared fixedly at the rearview mirror, and finally, through a break in the rain, I saw a blurred face. It wasn't the driver inside a car, but a person, a man, standing outside a vehicle, his upper body leaning out the window, holding a flashlight and grinning at me. His smile looked incredibly twisted and sinister in the flashlight's glow. I could even see him wearing a soaking wet baseball cap, his eyes gleaming like a beast's from beneath the brim. He was hitting my car window, making dull thudding sounds. Although I couldn't hear what he was saying, I knew it wasn't anything good. I pressed the accelerator harder. The car skidded on the wet road, and I desperately held the steering wheel steady. The man was still hitting my car window, even trying to punch it. I could hear the glass creaking, as if it would shatter at any moment. I looked to the side and saw that the car door behind him had opened, and another blurred figure was trying to lean out. They wanted to force me to stop. The only thought in my mind was to escape. I saw a fork in the road ahead, and though I didn't know where it led, I slammed the steering wheel without hesitation. The car swerved, almost hitting the guardrail, but I successfully turned. I saw in my rearview mirror that they hesitated for a moment, then followed me. I drove onto a narrower, muddier road, branches scraping against the car, making a jarring noise. I didn't know where this road led. I just wanted to get away from them, even if it meant driving into the woods. I don't know how long I drove, but finally, that light disappeared from my rearview mirror. I pulled over next to an abandoned shed, turned off all my lights, and my whole body was trembling. The rain was still falling, and my clothes were soaked with sweat. I didn't dare get out of the car, nor did I dare to sleep. I just stayed there until dawn. The next morning, I checked my car and found that my right rear taillight was shattered, and there were several deep scratches on the car body, as if something sharp had scraped it. I even found a strange copper coin on the trunk lid, with an unfamiliar design etched on it, just lying there, as if mocking my ordeal from the night before. To this day, I don't know who those two people were, why they were following me, or what that coin meant. Since then, I've never dared to drive long distances alone in the rain again. Every time I hear the sound of rain hitting the car window, I instinctively glance at my rearview mirror, fearing that eerie light will reappear. That night's experience is like an unfinished nightmare, often replaying in my mind, leaving me forever haunted by the fear of being followed, of being hunted. I remember that night, every detail etched into my mind. Even now, they surface occasionally, pulling me back into that icy dread. It was a September rainy night, and I was working the night shift at a remote factory, monitoring some equipment. The factory was in a secluded area, surrounded by nothing but barren land and a few sparse trees. The nearest house was miles away. Usually I didn't mind the solitude. In fact, I quite enjoyed the peace. But on that night, the peace transformed into the most terrifying thing imaginable. The rain started around 10 p.m. At first, it was a gentle drizzle, then it turned into a downpour, drumming loudly on the factory's tin roof. I sat in the control room, staring at the flickering data on the screen, listening to some soothing music through my headphones, trying to drown out the sound of the rain. Around 1 a.m., I suddenly felt like something was off. All the machines in the factory were quiet, so besides the rain, the entire compound should have been completely silent. But I heard another sound besides the rain, a faint, almost imperceptible dragging sound, like metal being slowly pulled across the floor. It was almost completely masked by the rain, yet it was unmistakably there. I took off my headphones and listened intently. The sound was intermittent, seeming to come from deeper within the factory. My heart sank. I was the only one on this shift, and I had already checked all the doors and windows, confirming they were locked. I picked up my flashlight, hesitated for a moment, then decided to go investigate. Only a few dim emergency lights illuminated the factory floor, casting long, distorted shadows that looked like monstrous figures. I walked slowly towards the source of the sound, each step deliberate and cautious. The rain echoed through the vast factory, amplifying the sound of my own heartbeat. As I reached a corner where discarded parts were stacked, the sound became clearer, a grating, scraping noise, like someone pushing a heavy metal cabinet. I raised my flashlight, and the beam pierced through the darkness, illuminating the corner. I saw a tall, dark figure with his back to me, struggling to move a large steel toolbox. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt a chill shoot up from my feet to my head. The person was wearing a dark hoodie, the hood obscuring his head, but I could see a tattooed forearm. He wasn't one of our factory workers. I had never seen him before. More importantly, why was he here, and why was he moving a toolbox? My mind raced. The only possibility was, he was an intruder. I froze, not daring to make a sound. The person didn't seem to notice me. He continued to push the heavy toolbox. I saw a long scratch mark on the bottom of the toolbox, extending all the way to a small, inconspicuous side door at the other end of the factory. He wanted to leave through there. My heart pounded even harder. My brain screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like they were filled with lead, unable to move. Just then, the person suddenly stopped. He seemed to sense something and spun around. I didn't have time to lower my flashlight, and the beam hit him square in the face. It was a face I would never forget, cold, expressionless, with eyes that glinted eerily in the flashlight's beam, like a predator spotting its prey. A strange smile slowly spread across his lips, then he lunged at me. I was terrified, dropping the flashlight with a clang. I turned and ran, sprinting towards the control room. Adrenaline surged, making my body feel incredibly light. I heard heavy footsteps behind me, getting closer and closer. I knew he was gaining on me. I ran for my life, weaving through machines and around stacks of goods. I could feel him right behind me. I could even hear his ragged breathing. Finally, I burst into the control room, slammed the door shut, and slid the bolt firmly into place. Gasping for air, I collapsed onto the floor. Through the small glass window in the door, I saw the dark figure stop outside. He didn't try to break down the door. He just stood there silently, his eyes staring at me from the darkness, full of a chilling amusement. He stood like that for a few minutes, then turned and slowly walked away. I heard the metal side door open, followed by a heavy thud as it closed. I called the police, and they arrived quickly. They searched the entire factory but found nothing, except for the drag marks from the toolbox and signs that the side door had been tampered with. The police told me that the person was likely a repeat offender, specializing in breaking into remote factories during rainstorms for theft. They checked the surveillance footage and found that the person had been in the factory for a long time, seemingly knowing the layout perfectly. He hadn't stolen anything valuable, just pried open the toolbox and taken some tools. But strangely, these tools weren't worth much. What chilled me to the bone was what the police found in an inconspicuous corner near the side door. A plastic bag held down by a rock. Inside the bag were some breadcrumbs and a few empty water bottles. The police said the person might have been there for several days, observing in secret. He knew my shift schedule, the factory layout, and possibly even my every move. He wasn't there to steal, he was just lurking. This discovery sent shivers down my spine. That rainy night, I hadn't accidentally encountered a thief. I had been targeted by a stranger who had been watching me for a long time. Even now, whenever it pours, I instinctively check the doors and windows, terrified that those eyes might appear outside again.